If you knew that the thought you try hardest to avoid is precisely the one that governs your life, would you still silently feed it? Joseph Murphy would say that at this very moment. As you read these lines, an order is already being sent to the deepest center of your mind. It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. It doesn't matter if you believe or not. The subconscious mind doesn't negotiate. It simply accepts what is repeated with sufficient intensity. There is something unsettling about the way we fear. Fear doesn't shout, it whispers. It disguises itself as prudence, realism, excessive caution. It says, what if it goes wrong? What if I lose? What if this doesn't work for me? And each of these seemingly harmless questions imprints an image on the mental body. Joseph Murphy observed this with surgical precision. Subconscious doesn't understand intention. It understands image. It doesn't understand negation, it understands form. That which you fear most gradually transforms into the dominant idea that occupies the center of your psychic life. Murphy didn't speak from assumptions. His vision stems from depth psychology combined with a spiritual understanding of the human mind. For him, the subconscious is a living, fertile, obedient field, a soil that never questions the seed sown. When you repeatedly think, I can't lose, the mind doesn't register the word can't. It registers the loss. When you insist on I can't fail, what is imprinted is failure. And then the disconcerting question arises. How many of your struggles didn't stem from thoughts you believed, were merely precautions? Joseph Murphy understood something that runs through ancient spiritual traditions and theosophical principles of the mental body. External reality is a consequence, never a cause. Nothing manifests outside before being accepted inside. Nothing is sustained in the visible world without first being maintained in the invisible. Yet most people live trying to control the effects, while ignoring the silent cause that pulsates in their minds. Every day, observe for a moment your internal dialogue, not the public discourse, but the one that happens when no one is listening. What do you repeat when you are alone? What images arise when you think about the future? Are they images of opening or closing, of expansion or loss? Murphy stated that the subconscious accepts the dominant idea in the same way that a mirror accepts the face that approaches it. Without criticism, without choice, simply reflects. There's a trap here, and it's subtle. Many people believe that intensely desiring something is enough to attract it, but Murphy was emphatic in saying that superficial desire has no power whatsoever in the face of a deep, conflicting belief. You can desire to prosper, to love, to grow, but if beneath that desire lies the constant fear of losing or not being enough, it is fear that governs. It becomes the silent axis around which everything revolves. Perhaps this explains why so many intelligent, dedicated, and hardworking people remain trapped in the same outcomes. Not due to a lack of ability, but due to an excess of unquestioned internal images. Murphy invites us to an uncomfortable reflection. Could bad luck, fate, or reality simply be the mind being faithful to the orders it has received? There is something profoundly liberating and at the same time disturbing about this idea. Liberating because it returns power to the individual. Disturbing because it removes excuses. If the subconscious mind obeys, then someone is in command. And that someone, whether you like it or not, is you, through what you think, feel, and repeat. Joseph Murphy didn't see this as condemnation, but as an invitation, a call to inner responsibility, a call to awaken the conscious observer. Because as long as you don't observe your thoughts, they observe you. As long as you don't choose the images you cultivate, they choose the course of your life. And here arises the inevitable tension. If the subconscious accepts the dominant idea, what has been the dominant idea that you have been feeding every day, perhaps without realizing it? Fear or confidence? Scarcity or possibility? Constant defense or silent openness? These questions do not demand an immediate answer. They demand honesty. Joseph Murphy taught that transformation doesn't begin with effort but with clarity. Seeing clearly is the first act of power. And nothing truly changes while that which operates in the invisible remains unconscious. Perhaps by the end of this section, something within you has already been touched. Not a ready answer, but a restlessness, a slight inner shift. So it's a sign that the mind has begun to listen. Because when the right question is planted, the subconscious begins its work. And from here, the path deepens. Because understanding that the dominant idea governs the mind is only the beginning. The next step is to discover who, in fact, is in charge of the orders you send out every day. Joseph Murphy said that if people could see the true workings of their own minds, many of their anxieties would immediately lose their meaning, not because the problems would cease to exist, but because their origin would finally become clear. He asserted that almost no one suffers because of what happens, but because of what was silently accepted within themselves long before the event. Imagine a common situation. You wake up early, look at your phone, and already feel a tightness in your chest. Before even getting out of bed, your mind starts listing everything that could go wrong that day. The difficult meeting, the bill to pay, the conversation you're avoiding, the fear of not being able to cope. None of this has happened yet, but your body reacts as if it were already real. Your heart races, your shoulders tense, your breathing becomes short. Joseph Murphy would say that at that moment, the subconscious has already begun to work. Not because something went wrong, but because the mental image has already been accepted. According to Murphy, the subconscious is like a faithful servant who never questions the authority of conscious thought. It doesn't analyze whether fear is rational, exaggerated, or unfounded. It simply registers the internal scene and begins to align behaviors, emotions, and perceptions so that that image finds coherence in the external world. This is why so many people say they feel that something always goes wrong, even when they can't explain exactly why. Murphy observed that this process happens so subtly that it goes unnoticed. You don't realize when you slightly change your tone of voice in an important conversation. You don't realize when you avoid an opportunity because it's not the right time. You don't realize when you sabotage yourself with small, daily decisions. But the subconscious notices everything. It connects each microaction to the dominant image that has been accepted. And so, little by little, reality begins to take shape. There's a curious point that Murphy liked to highlight. Many people believe they are being positive because they make affirmations or maintain optimistic speeches in public. But when they are alone, the internal dialogue is completely different. There is a profound difference between what you say and what you believe. The subconscious responds to the felt belief, not to the mechanically repeated phrase. And this difference explains why so much effort seems to yield no results. Imagine someone who claims to want to prosper, but feels guilty when thinking about money. Who desires a healthy relationship, but associates love with pain? Who seeks recognition, but carries a constant fear of being seen? Joseph Murphy explained that the subconscious doesn't enter into conflict. It chooses the path that maintains internal coherence. If prospering generates guilt, it avoids it. If loving brings pain, it distances itself, not as punishment, but out of fidelity to stored images. There's something almost mysterious about how this works. Murphy reported cases of people who repeated the same patterns for decades, only changing the settings. The job changed, but the conflict remained the same. The partner changed, but the story repeated itself. The city changed, but the inner feeling remained. For him, this wasn't a coincidence. It was programming. And here a silent, almost uncomfortable shift occurs. If the subconscious creates coherence, then it's not against you. It's on your side, executing exactly what it has learned to consider as truth. This perception changes everything. The enemy ceases to be external. Bad luck loses its power as an explanation. Chance begins to seem less random. Joseph Murphy liked to remind us that the subconscious mind operates 24 hours a day. While you sleep, it continues working. While you are distracted, it continues organizing responses, paths, reactions. That's why certain ideas arise out of nowhere. Certain encounters happen at unlikely moments. Certain decisions seem intuitive. None of this is magic. It's the result of a mind that has received instructions and is fulfilling its role. Perhaps you've experienced something like this before, a period when everything seemed to flow effortlessly. The right people appeared, opportunities arose, decisions seemed clear. Murphy would say that, in those moments, your internal image was aligned. The captain knew where to go, and the engine room worked silently. But the opposite is also true. When fear dominates, everything seems heavy, slow, difficult. Not because the world has changed, but because the mind has changed command. This understanding raises an inevitable question. If the subconscious obeys so faithfully, why do so many people continue to feed images that imprison them? The answer, according to Murphy, is simple and disturbing at the same time. Because they don't know they are doing it. They act automatically. They react to the past. They repeat what they have learned without questioning. And it is precisely here that the journey begins to get deeper. Because understanding how the subconscious works is not yet transforming it. It is merely opening your eyes. True change requires something more subtle, something that Murphy considered essential. Consciously taking control of the images you allow to live within yourself. But before learning how to do that, there's something that needs to be confronted. Certain mental patterns are so old, so normalized, that they seem to be part of our identity, and questioning them requires courage. It's at this point that many retreat, others move forward. From this point on, the question is no longer, why is this happening to me, but becomes another, much more powerful and unsettling one. What orders have I been sending to my mind without realizing it? Joseph Murphy claimed that there is a precise point at which knowledge ceases to be mere information and transforms into risk. Risk because from that point on, you can no longer pretend you don't know. It is at this point that many readers of his teachings felt a discomfort difficult to explain. It wasn't fear of the new, but the feeling that something deeply rooted was being exposed. Murphy knew that understanding the subconscious is not comfortable. It is a process of internal stripping bare. He observed that most people believe they are thinking, when in reality they are merely repeating. They repeat phrases heard in childhood. They repeat conclusions drawn in moments of pain. They repeat expectations inherited from limited environments. These repetitions are not conscious. They become mental pathways so deep that they come to be confused with identity. I am like this, the person says, without realizing that this like this was learned, not chosen. Murphy then introduced a little discussed idea. Subconscious doesn't react to the present, but to the familiar. It prefers the known to the desired. That's why often when something new starts to go well, a strange unease arises, almost a desire to go back. Success can seem threatening when it conflicts with the self-image built up throughout life. How many times have you turned away from something good without being able to explain exactly why? At this point, Murphy was silently posing a question to the reader. Do you want to change, or are you just trying to alleviate the pain by keeping everything as it is? This question doesn't seek an immediate answer. It acts as a crack in automatic thinking. Because desiring change is easy, sustaining a new internal image is the real challenge. There is a little explored aspect in Murphy's work that concerns psychological time. He said that the subconscious does not work with urgency, but with constancy. It does not respond to fleeting emotional impulses, but to what remains alive in the mental field. This explains why promises made in times of crisis are rarely kept. Once the emotional impact has passed, the old image regains control. Murphy compared this process to trying to change the course of a river by pushing the water with your hands. Momentary force is useless. It is necessary to alter the direction of the riverbed, and the riverbed of the mind is formed by thought habits, recurring images, and repeated emotions. Without this structural change, any external attempt dissolves over time. Have you ever noticed how some changes seem promising at the beginning, but then everything returns to the same place? Here emerges a disconcerting revelation. Murphy claimed that the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between suffering and pleasure when both are familiar. It clings to the pattern, not the comfort. Therefore, people may remain in clearly painful situations simply because they are predictable. The unknown, even positive, generates insecurity, and the subconscious interprets insecurity as a threat. Perhaps that's why so many people say they want to prosper but feel an inner weight when imagining growth, or claim to want freedom, but sabotage themselves when it approaches. Murphy didn't see this as a moral failing, but as unconscious loyalty to what has been learned. The subconscious protects what it considers identity, even if that identity is based on pain. And then an inevitable question arises. Who would you be without the stories you repeat about yourself? This question, when asked honestly, is unsettling, because it reveals how much of our lives is sustained by unexamined internal narratives. Murphy believed that the greatest prison of humankind is not external but symbolic. It lives in the mind, disguised as reality. Another point that is rarely discussed is that Murphy did not advocate obsessive control of thoughts. On the contrary, he warned that monitoring the mind with excessive rigidity generates tension and internal conflict. The subconscious responds better to quiet clarity than to repression. It's not about fighting negative thoughts, but about understanding why they arise and what function they serve. When this understanding occurs, something curious emerges. Thought loses its power. The image begins to dissolve. Murphy said that consciousness is in itself transformative. What you observe with lucidity ceases to operate automatically. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it loses control. Have you ever noticed how certain fears weaken when they are seen clearly? This is the point at which the internal narrative begins to change, not by imposition but by choice. Murphy spoke of a silent authority that arises when the individual realizes that they can select, nurture, or discard mental images. This authority doesn't shout. It establishes itself consistently. But here another challenge arises. Selecting new images requires patience. The subconscious doesn't accept abrupt changes without resistance. It tests. It reverts to old patterns. It provokes doubt. This process is often interpreted as failure, when in reality it's just a transition. How many people give up at exactly this point, believing that nothing works for them? Joseph Murphy insisted that gentle persistence is key, not mechanical repetition, but coherent emotional experience. The new image needs to be felt as possible, not as a distant fantasy. Otherwise, the subconscious rejects it. It only accepts that which does not threaten the internal sense of identity. This understanding opens an important door. Change is not about becoming someone different, but about allowing a broader version of yourself to become familiar. It's a process of expansion, not denial. Murphy saw this as a maturing of the psyche, not as a self-help technique. And now, perhaps the most provocative question of this section, the subconscious responds to what is familiar. What have you been making familiar within yourself every day? Fear or confidence? Limitation or possibility? The answer lies not in what you say, but in what you feel when you imagine the future. From this point on, the journey enters even more sensitive territory, because understanding how the mind works is only half the battle. The other half involves recognizing certain internal patterns that silently sabotage any progress. And some of them are so socially accepted that they go unnoticed. The next section focuses on these hidden, almost invisible patterns. Joseph Murphy used to say that the most dangerous moment on the inner journey is not when a person suffers, but when they believe they have already understood everything. It is at this point that the hidden mechanism of the mind acts with greater force, because now it hides behind a false sense of clarity. Many people intellectually understand how the subconscious works, but continue living as if nothing has changed. For Murphy, this happens because the true command is not in conscious thought, but in the silent pattern that governs automatic reactions. He recounted curious cases of people who claimed to have completely changed their way of thinking, but who continued to repeat exactly the same results. A man who changed jobs every 2 years, always with the same frustrating outcome. A woman who attracted relationships that were different in appearance but identical in emotional dynamics. For Murphy, these were not isolated failures, but clear evidence of an unrecognized internal command. The subconscious had only changed the scenery, keeping the script the same. There's a curious fact that Murphy mentioned in his lectures. A large part of human decisions are not made rationally but automatically. Later studies confirmed that most daily choices happen even before the conscious mind formulates a justification. The subconscious acts first. The conscious mind explains later. This means that when you believe you are choosing freely, you are often just obeying an old pattern. This realization often causes bewilderment, almost a silent shock. Murphy used a simple image to explain this. Imagine someone driving the same route every day. Even if the traffic is bad, the person follows the usual route without realizing that there are alternatives. The body drives, the mind wanders. That's how the subconscious works. It chooses the known path, even if it's longer or more painful. The new demands attention. The old demands only repetition. Impressive accounts emerged when Murphy spoke about psychosomatic illnesses. He observed that many ailments persisted not only due to physical causes, but also because of deeply ingrained mental images. People who saw themselves as fragile fell ill more frequently. People who associated rest with guilt could not relax without anxiety. These patterns were not conscious. They were beliefs incorporated into the mental body over time. In one of his most striking accounts, Murphy told of a woman who, after years of unsuccessful treatments, realized that her mind carried a constant image of physical incapacity. It wasn't something she verbalized, but she felt it. When this image began to be worked through internally, the body responded unexpectedly. Murphy didn't treat this as a miracle, but as coherence. The body simply followed the new mental instruction. This point often provokes resistance. The idea that the mind so greatly influences reality seems exaggerated to many. Murphy recognized this. He didn't ask for blind faith, but honest observation. Looking at one's own life and identifying repeated patterns is an uncomfortable exercise. After all, admitting repetition is admitting participation, and that removes the comfortable position of being a victim of chance. Murphy also warned of a curious phenomenon. When someone begins to question their internal patterns, the subconscious reacts. Old situations reappear. People from the past return. Forgotten emotions emerge. not as punishment, but as a test. It's as if the mind silently asks, do you really want change, or will you retreat to the familiar? Many interpret this as a sign that they are on the wrong path, when in fact it is the opposite. Another little discussed aspect is that the subconscious responds not only to thoughts, but also to the constant emotional climate. It's no use imagining something positive for a few minutes, and then spending the rest of the day in tension, irritation, or fear. Murphy stated that the predominant emotional state functions as an energetic signature. It is this that the subconscious recognizes as a valid order. Therefore, two people can use the same technique and obtain completely different results. There are accounts of people who, upon understanding this, changed small details of their daily lives and saw great transformations. They changed the way they woke up, the rhythm at which they spoke to themselves, the emotional tone when remembering the past. They didn't change the external world immediately, but they changed their internal control. And the world responded belatedly, but it did respond. Murphy said that the subconscious mind doesn't work in haste, but with precision. It orchestrates improbable encounters, unexpected ideas, and solutions outside the obvious. Often the result doesn't come in the imagined way, and this is confusing. People give up because they expect a specific path. Murphy warned that the subconscious always chooses the path of least internal resistance, not the most logical one for the conscious mind. Perhaps that's why so many turnaround stories seem improbable. People who find opportunities outside their initial plan, relationships that arise at unexpected moments, decisions that seem intuitive but change everything. Murphy saw in these events the subconscious mind working without excessive interference from fear. And here arises a crucial point in the narrative. If the subconscious responds to the dominant emotional pattern, then certain seemingly harmless behaviors may be sabotaging everything. Small internal criticisms, constant comparisons, automatic judgments. These elements go unnoticed, but they shape the internal climate that governs the mind's responses. From this understanding, the journey ceases to be merely about creating positive images and becomes about identifying hidden programs that drain energy and distort internal control. Some of these programs are so common that they seem normal. Others are so old that they are confused with personality. It is precisely about these silent, socially accepted, and rarely questioned programs that the next part delves into. Joseph Murphy used to say that the greatest enemies of transformation are not major traumas, but socially accepted mental habits. Those that no one questions. Those that seem normal, prudent, even virtuous. It is precisely there that the subconscious operates most efficiently because it encounters no resistance. It acts under the guise of logic, morality, and common sense. One of these silent programs is automatic criticism. Murphy observed that many people believe they are merely expressing an opinion, when in fact they are internally reinforcing what they reject. Whenever someone sees the success of another and immediately looks for a flaw, a negative explanation, or a devaluation, something happens in the mental field. The subconscious registers the message with absolute clarity. This is undesirable, this is dangerous, this should be avoided. And then, for consistency, it steers similar experiences away from one's own life. Murphy said something disturbing. You don't lose what you desire, you lose what you condemn, not through external punishment, but through internal alignment. The mind doesn't conflict with itself. If you associate wealth with corruption, love with pain, visibility with risk, the subconscious will do everything to keep you away from those experiences, no matter how much you say you want them. The true command lies in the automatic emotional reaction. Another program that Murphy considered devastating is overexertion. From an early age, we learn that everything requires extreme sacrifice, constant struggle, and continuous wear and tear. This discourse is repeated as a virtue, but Murphy warned that at the subconscious level, excessive effort communicates lack. It communicates urgency. It communicates fear of failure, and the subconscious responds by maintaining this state of scarcity. He used simple everyday examples. When someone forces a creative idea, it doesn't come. When they force sleep, it runs away. When they force a relationship, it wears them down. The more internal pressure, the greater the resistance. The subconscious understands effort as a sign that something is wrong and tries to restore balance by maintaining the known pattern. This explains why so many people strive harder and less. There are curious accounts of people who only prospered when they gave up trying to control every detail. They didn't give up on the goal, but on the desperation. Murphy said there's a profound difference between dedication and tension. Dedication is firm and silent. Tension is noisy and anxious. The subconscious responds to the first. It rejects the second. But no program is as treacherous as fear disguised as realism. Murphy called it the elegant saboteur. It presents itself as prudence, planning, maturity. Says don't get your hopes up, better not to get your hopes up, have a plan B. At first glance it seems sensible, but at the subconscious level, this stance sends a clear message. Don't trust, prepare for the worst. The problem is that the subconscious works through repetition. The more you imagine the worst-case scenario to protect yourself, the more familiar it becomes. And what is familiar tends to manifest. Murphy observed that many people end up living exactly what they tried to avoid for years. Not because they consciously attracted it, but because they mentally rehearsed it every day. Here the narrative takes on a more tense tone. Because Murphy claimed that fear not only blocks opportunities, it shapes perception. The person begins to see risks where none exist, rejects invitations that could change their life, and distrusts simple solutions. The world seems harder, more closed, more hostile. Not because it has changed, but because the internal lens has changed. There is a decisive moment when this dynamic reveals itself. Usually when a real opportunity arises, something concrete. Invitation, a chance, an unexpected opening. That instant, desire and fear clash. And almost always, if the fear has been rehearsed for years, it wins. The person retreats, rationalizes, explains to themselves why it wasn't the right time. The subconscious sighs with relief. The pattern has been preserved. Murphy said that this is the point where many believe they have failed again, when in reality, they have only obeyed their internal programming. And here comes the most difficult twist to accept. The subconscious doesn't want your happiness, it wants your consistency. It doesn't seek the best, it seeks the known. It doesn't evaluate the future, it preserves identity. This understanding changes the game, because it makes it clear that it's not enough to simply wish for different results. It's necessary to dismantle the programs that operate silently behind the decisions. And some of these programs are so old that they seem to be part of the personality. Questioning them causes discomfort. Abandoning them creates emptiness. And it is precisely in this emptiness that many give up. Murphy warned that when these programs begin to weaken, fear tends to temporarily increase. Not because something is going wrong, but because the subconscious has lost a reference point. It tries to restore the old balance. Situations repeat themselves, old thoughts return, doubts arise strongly. This is the silent test. Most people interpret this moment as a sign of failure and revert to the old pattern. Few remain. Few understand that the tension is not a setback, but a transition. Murphy said that every real change goes through a short period of internal instability. It's the price of reprogramming. And now, with all this exposed, an inevitable expectation arises. If these programs can be recognized, weakened, and replaced, then there is a method. There is a practical path. There is a way to dialogue directly with the subconscious, without conflict, without excessive effort, without disguised fear. It is precisely this path, simple in form and profound in effect, that is revealed in the final part. Joseph Murphy said that all true teaching is only complete when it is transformed into experience. It is not enough to understand, agree, or feel emotion. The subconscious mind does not respond to intellectual conclusions, but to simple, repeated, and felt practices. Therefore, everything said so far converges on an essential point. Don't change your life by fighting against it. You change your life by changing the relationship you establish with your own mind. After understanding that the subconscious obeys the dominant idea, that it preserves familiar patterns, that it seeks coherence above comfort, an inevitable question arises: what to do now in practice? Murphy was direct. He didn't advocate complex rituals or elaborate techniques. He taught a silent, accessible, and profoundly transformative path that begins the moment the external world falls silent. For Murphy, the most powerful moment of the day is the one before sleep, when the body relaxes, when the defenses of the conscious mind diminish, when the noise of the world fades away. In this state, the subconscious is open, receptive, attentive. Everything you accept as true at that moment tends to be incorporated easily, not by magic, but by the natural functioning of the mind. The exercise is simple, but it requires presence. Before going to sleep, put your cell phone away. Turn off any distractions and allow your body to slow down. Consciously relax every part from head to toe. Then create a short, clear mental scene, experienced in the first person. Don't observe yourself from the outside. Live the experience from within. If your goal involves tranquility, feel your body light. If it involves achievement, feel satisfaction. If it involves prosperity, feel security. Emotion is the central element. Without emotion, the image doesn't stick. Joseph Murphy insisted on a point that many ignore. Try to figure out how it will happen. The how belongs to the subconscious. Your role is to accept the outcome as possible and real in your inner self. When you try to control the path, you activate fear. When you accept destiny, you activate trust. And the subconscious responds to trust with solutions that the rational mind could never create. After creating that image and feeling the corresponding emotion, let go. Don't monitor it. Don't demand it. Don't test it. Murphy compared this process to planting a seed. You don't dig up the soil every day to see if it's growing. You trust. This trust is not passivity, it's alignment. During the day, live mindfully but without obsession. Do what needs to be done, without carrying the weight of the outcome. Over time, something begins to change. Ideas come more clearly. Decisions become more natural. Unlikely encounters happen, not because the world has become magical, but because the internal command has changed. The captain has begun to give clear orders, and the engine room has responded with precision. Joseph Murphy said that the subconscious is a powerful ally when it receives coherent instructions. It's important to remember that this process doesn't eliminate challenges. It changes how you respond to them. Difficult situations still arise, but they no longer define your internal state. The mind stops reacting automatically and starts choosing. This is the true freedom that Murphy taught. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of awareness. Perhaps throughout this video, you recognized your own patterns, recurring thoughts, and repeated behaviors. Perhaps you felt discomfort at times. This is natural. Transformation begins when something shifts from within. Don't ignore it. Don't revert to autopilot. Use this awareness as a starting point. If there is one final message Joseph Murphy would leave here, it would be this. The subconscious mind is always listening. It responds to what you accept as truth. Carefully choosing what you feed internally is an act of self-respect. It's not about faking positivity, but about cultivating coherence. Now, if this content resonated with you, if something here touched your personal experience, I invite you to take action, like this video, so that more people can access this knowledge. Comment even anonymously, saying what caught your attention the most or what you realized about yourself, and subscribe to the channel to continue deepening this path of awareness, mind, and transformation. See you in the next video.